So chapter 2 starts off with now a logic and reasoning. Today we're going to be looking at an introduction to conditional statements, which will help us with some of our postulates and theorems when we're proving them a little bit later on. Again, this is for advanced geometry, first, third, and fifth hours. If you're in my second or fourth hours, you'll have a different video to watch tonight, and it's not this one. Okay, so to start, for a conditional statement basically is what's called an if-then statement. And if you notice this sentence, if I get straight A's, then my parents will give me $50, starts off with an if, a then in the middle. That's why it's called an if-then statement. But more so in class, I'll call it a conditional statement, and this is what I'm talking about. Now, every conditional statement will have both a hypothesis and a conclusion. It's a little bit different than in science class. Our hypothesis is just whatever follows the if. So hypothesis here is I get straight A's. And it's not including the if, so it's just I get straight A's. The conclusion, therefore, is what's left. After the then, my parents will give me $50. So my parents, will give me So again, tomorrow in class, if I ask you for the hypothesis conclusion, that's pretty much it. What's after the if, what's after the then. Now, in addition to identifying the hypothesis and conclusion, I'll ask you to do several other things. I'll ask you to write the inverse, the converse, and the contrapositive to a statement. And we'll start with the converse. The converse is going to be basically just to take this and switch it. So we write the conclusion first. So for example, if my parents give me $50, and we can change the wording a little bit, and we can even make it past tense. So if my parents gave me $50, then I got straight A's. Again, all we're doing is we're putting the conclusion, then hypothesis. Okay, so we just switch them around. So let's get into the inverse then. With the inverse, we're going to make this not true. So basically the order stays the same, so the order we don't do anything to, and we just negate it. It's what's called negating. So if I do not, notice I put in that do not now, get straight A's, what do you think will happen? Well, we're not going to get $50. So we'll put in then my parents will not, do not, something like that, will not give me $50. Okay, so this chapter obviously is a lot different. It doesn't even seem like math, but trust me, it relates. And once you see some of our postulates and theorems, it kind of makes sense as to why we're doing some of these things. Okay, so now the last thing is we're going to do our contrapositive. Contrapositive, we go back to, it's kind of like a mixture of the two. So we're going to put the conclusion first, then the hypothesis, but we're also going to negate it, so make it not true. So if my parents did not give me $50, again, we want to negate it in there, so did not give me then I did not get straight A's. Okay. There we go. That is our contrapositive. Now, most of the time we're going to use what's called symbolic notation. So the symbolic notation part of this, it looks like, really it's P and a Q. Now P is always going to be really pretty much our hypothesis. And we can let other letters stand for it sometimes as well. But what we said earlier, I get straight A's, that's my hypothesis. In other words, that is what we'll call the P. Conclusion, we said, was my parents will give me $50. We'll call that the Q. Okay. So let me show the next slide here. So when we write the symbolic notation for the conditional statement, again, all we're writing is P, then Q. And again, that little arrow just represents then. So it's if the hypothesis, then the conclusion. So remember earlier we wrote the converse. The converse, again, we just switched around the hypothesis and conclusion. So it makes sense that if I write the hypothesis first, then the conclusion, that's our symbolic notation. Okay. Inverse, again, we kept the order the same, so it was conclusion last, hypothesis first. But we're also going to throw in something else. This little symbol here means not. So it's a little squiggly in front, not the hypothesis, then not the conclusion. Our last one, we'll go ahead and write in, again, we wanted to switch the order. So it's going to be not the conclusion, then not the hypothesis. Again, it looks a little weird right now. As soon as we practice it, you'll be able to see it a little bit more clear. But at least we'll have the notes down and you'll be able to understand what that means. So in conclusion for tomorrow, again, really all I need you to know is what a conditional statement is. So that's an if-then statement. What the hypothesis and conclusion is, what the converse, inverse, contrapositive is, and what that symbolic notation looks like. Once you have that down, you've mastered what I need you to do today.